We've been covering Bible Numerics, and this is kind of like one of those studies I like to do. It's kind of like more for fun. It jumps around quite a bit because you're always going to the next number. We covered the big number 5 last week, and I think most of you will agree that there's so much abundant evidence of what the number 5 represents in the Bible that you'd have to be blind not to get it. Of course, most of Christendom is, and they didn't get it, but it pictures death. Now, you can say grace, because there are others that do, but it's going to be death because it took the death of Christ to bring about the grace of God. And the reason you know that is Genesis 5:5, Adam dies. Acts 5:5, Ananias dies. 1 Corinthians 5:5, a man's being turned over for the destruction of the flesh. Romans 5 is the death chapter. Mark 5:5, the maniac Gadara hung out in the tombs with dead people. Proverbs 5:5 warns that immorality will bring on premature death. Psalms 5:5, God hates the wicked and they will not stand in his sight. They face eternal judgment. 1 Samuel 5, God smites the Philistines with death and hemorrhoids. And it just goes on and on and on. And I just gave you a list of just a few things. Not only do we see that 5, where David chose 5 smooth stones to take on Goliath and his 4 brothers, but it's even in the verse numbering. And you can't dismiss that. In all of these, we're going to see the numbers that are where they mean something, but they're actually in the verse numbering. And I told you how the verse numbering came about, and what was it? Erasmus? I mean, he's traveling, he's doing his Greek text, and he wants to number the verses, and he's traveling in a coach, and he's on his way to Lyons, France, somewhere. And as he's going along, he's marking these verses, and they say every time he hit a bump, he put down the next number, That's why you got short verses and long verses. But I'm telling you, God was in the bumps, because there's no way you can explain this. No way. There's no other book in the world that has this type of numbering system where the numbers actually mean something to the verse they're attached to. And we'll see it. We'll see it again and again and again. And finally, you realize that the Bible stands alone as the only piece of literature that is supernatural in nature, that God wrote it. Oh, anyway, look at... we're going to do with the number 6 this morning. And of course, 6 is going to have a connection with man, of course, and it's going to have a connection with incompleteness. Because it's before 7 before 7 and after, before 8. Oh, I can't even get it right here. That's it. It's after 5 and before 7. We'll just call that a senior moment. Anyway, it's going to be connected with man, incompleteness, and it's also got a connection with the Antichrist. And we'll take a look at all those. We talked about first mention in the Bible. Whenever you have first mention, usually that sets the meaning of something all the way through Scripture, or at least the main meaning, okay? And it's going to be true of this. Look at Genesis 1:31. Now, we're not looking at the verse numbering, but the actual where you find the number in the verse. In Genesis chapter 1, verse 31, and God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good, and the evening and the morning were the sixth day. And what's interesting about that is he made man on the 6th day. Okay? So that kind of sets the thing. It gives you a connection between the 6th day and man. Look at Genesis chapter 7, verse 6. Genesis 7, verse 6. And he says, and Noah was 600 years old when the flood of the waters was upon the earth. Of course, it wipes out all but 8 men. But he was 600 years old when the flood comes. Now, I'm going to jump over to something in the science realm, because these numbers are not just true biblically. They're going to be true outside of the Bible because why? Because God created everything, and it's still going to declare His glory. It seems like the periodic chart likes to stay right up with the Bible, which is surprising that man didn't get it wrong. I'm not saying everything on the periodic chart is correct. Everything in the Bible is correct and right, but not maybe everything on the periodic chart. But I remember sitting in a science class in Sinclair, and I was taking just basic chemistry. And of course, we were talking about the periodic chart. And they were talking about carbon. Carbon's number 6. You know what a man's made of, right? He's made of carbon. You are a carbon-based unit, if you want to get the sci-fi definition of what you are. And of course, carbon's 6th element on the periodic chart. Now, what's interesting is, and then when I heard this, man, I'm back there. I mean, everybody's looking at me like I think he's having a seizure. He's having a seizure. Because I'm just like, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The carbon-12 isotope, 12 connected with Israel, Antichrist is connected with Israel, has 6 protons, 6 neutrons, and 6 electrons. And the Bible says, let him that hath wisdom count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. And even the periodic chart proves it. So, 6 days. How many times 6 days is mentioned in connection with labor? A man laboring. 6 days shalt thou labor, rest on the 7th. It's mentioned 19 times. Now, one of the things you understand from the Genesis account is that you have 6 days there, and those are actually 24-hour periods. They're not, you can't make that 1,000 years. I understand you can make a prophetical day 1,000 years from 2 Peter 3, but he says the evening and the morning. That makes it a 24-hour period of time. But the picture is there. The picture is there that after 6,000 years, there'll be a 1,000 year of rest because God rested the 7th. And that's that law of Sabbaths. On that 7th day, on that 7th millennium, it's a 1,000-year rest. We call it the 1,000-year reign of Christ. But you have 6,000 years of human history, of which, if our calendar is correct, we would be done. We'd be in the millennium by 23 years. So something's afoul or something's not correct because God doesn't miss. Man misses all the time. And if you've ever done a study of calendars, which I feel sorry for you, but if you've ever tried to do a study of calendars, you'll know just how incomplete and totally whacked out most of them are. I don't know how far, maybe from the time of Christ we might be able to come forward and have a correct number, but I doubt it. Both calendar systems, Julian and Gregorian, are both Roman. And you can't trust anything Rome does. I mean, the Julian calendar, Julius Caesar, Rome, we're talking around 40 BC, they kicked that one in. And then the Gregorian calendar, I think that might have been 400 AD, they kicked that one in. But both of them were Pontifex Maximus's, the high priest of the Babylonian religion. Of course, they don't know that. And the fact that they probably fouled up the calendars. Stick with the Bible. I've always said this, and I believe it. The Bible talks about, one time the Bible mentions waymarks. Waymarks. If you're ever going through the woods and you're trying to find your way, you can tie things on branches. They got these little ties that you can tie on a branch that glow in the dark. If you have to come back through in the dark, just put your flashlight up and it'll pick up, and they're a little twist tie. You can tie it around a limb, if you come back that way. Well, you make a waymark. Or of a rock or something you can identify as this is the way I'm to go. Now, what was I going to tell you about that? Anyway, God established waymarks in history. What happened on May the 14th, 1948? Israel became a nation, didn't they not? That's a waymark. That's a marker. The crucifixion of Jesus Christ is a waymark. You've probably got some others in there I can't think of at the moment, but you've got different waymarks down through history. And that's the only way I know to properly get an idea of where we're at. And we're at the end. 1948 kicked off the timer, man. It click, 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 it's going. Because that just signaled the times of the Gentiles is about to wind up, and God's going to turn back to that Jew, and into the tribulation we go. Or we don't go, but somebody's going in there. And it's not going to be us, amen? All right. If 7 is God's number of divine completeness, which we'll get to, then 6 would fall short of it. Look at Hebrews chapter 2, verse 9, and this is just something that's said about Christ. That when he became a man, it says, but we see Jesus who was made a little lower than the angels. We're talking about being made a man. For the suffering of death, crowned with glory and honor, that he by the grace of God should taste death for every man. So the picture there is that he was made a man, and man is a little lower than the angels. We're number 6. Anything that's in heaven bound might be a 7, but we're a 6 on the scale. I think we fall short. And you know what? For all of sin to come short of the glory of God, we fall short of perfection. So definitely that 6 is, if it's 7 is completeness, 6 is incomplete. Incomplete. So if 6 is the number of man, and 3, without a doubt, is the number of the Trinity, stamped all over creation, then 3 6s would be a man trying to be God, wouldn't it? Just asking. I mean, and there's where you can combine things and look at things. There's so much you can do, and I got to be careful that my mathematical mind is practically near zero. I had a tough time getting through pre-algebra. Okay, I nearly blew a cog trying to get through pre-algebra. So this is not my area. But man, if you ever had someone that had a mathematical mind, mathematician, someone had a doctorate in math, they could really go to town looking at this stuff. Okay, anyway. All right. You find 666 found 4 times in your Bible. Look at Ezra 2:13. We'll go through these real quick. I realize we've jumped from 6 to 666, but there's where we need to go next. Ezra 2 verse 13. It says the children of Adoniram 666. You know what that fellow's name means? Lord of the Rebellion. Adoniram, Lord of the Rebellion. And notice the verse that it's in, because it's always that 13 and 18 are going to go together. Revelation 13, 18, we'll get there. The connection, you can't dismiss it after a while. It's in verse 13. We'll see how Judas, when we get to 13, how Judas Iscariot comes up 13 all the time. Even 13 letters in his name. Look at 2 Chronicles 9:13. Second Chronicles 9:13. It says, now the weight of gold that came to Solomon in 1 year was 666 talents of gold. Uh-oh. This is one of those things that, people studying the Bible, they strip a gear because they just don't want to believe what they read. But we know that Solomon is a type of Christ because of his reign. It was a peaceful reign. It was at the height of the power of Israel in that day. But we also know that 1,000 different women turned his heart away from the Lord, and that Solomon actually starts worshiping idols. He starts building edifices to these idols for all these women that he married, and he becomes what we call dual type. In one part of his life, he's a type of Christ, and in another part, he's a type of the Antichrist. He's a type of the Antichrist. you can take chapter 9 plus 1 plus 3 too, and it comes up 13. You say, oh, no, I'm not going to buy that. You don't have to. That's just free. But I'm just saying, you always get these 13s, you get 6s, you get 18s, because they're all connected and related, and the Bible just lays those out. Notice it's verse 13 again, where you find 666. All right, look at 1 Kings 10:14. Now, I'm not going to tell you it happens all the time, but there might not be something that I see there. And this is the parallel passage to it. 1 Kings 10:14. Now the weight of gold that came to Solomon in 1 year was 666 talents of gold. So you have it twice. Just a parallel verse. Let me see what I got here. 1 plus 1 plus 4. Oh, yeah. If you just add the numerals together, 1 plus 1 plus 4, you get, or 1 plus 0 plus 1 plus 4, you get 6. Revelation 13:18, this is the last time you find it. And again, 13 verse 18. 18 is divisible by 6 how many times? 3 times. It says, here's wisdom. In other words, let him that hath understanding count. Sometimes you got to do some counting in the Bible. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. In chapter 13, verse 18. Okay? All right. Now, if you've ever read Dr. Ruckman's book on Mark of the Beast, which I highly recommend you do, he says you always ought to watch out for words that end in X, okay? And of course, we're talking 6, 6, 6. And of course, we know that is the number of the Antichrist. It's not his mark, and it's not his name, but it is his number, because you'll find out they're all different. The number, the mark, and the name. Sometimes we say mark of the beast, but it's actually his number. But if you take that in Greek, that word is hex, hex, hex. That's in Greek, which is a triple hex. Okay? You take the mark, and guess what? You're cursed. You're cursed. As far as I can tell from the book of Revelation, there's no way out of that thing. You seal your fate. Hex, hex, hex. But then, wow, Latin. You know what a sextuplet is, right? Yeah, that's a problem. Feeding 6 kids, right? That's what it is. It's a big problem. When you say a sextet, is 6 singers, right? Sex is 6, right? But if you triple that, well, if I get it right here, you know what you got? You've got triple X porn. Sex XX is triple X. Straight from hell. Connected with the beast. Watch words that end in X. You know what they call, another name for a king is a Rex. Yeah. And there's a king going to show up. And there's a pox connected with that Rex. You'll find that pox mentioned Numbers, 2 chapters on it. The Antichrist ordered a lot of supplies, didn't he? Yeah, 1 day shipping. There, I want to jump to this one. When you, and this is something most of you already know if you've probably seen it on the internet, but a barcode, it has these thin lines, one at the beginning. Well, I can't draw a thin line. And it's got one in the middle. Usually it's maybe a little longer, but it's still the same thin line, two thin lines, and then one at the end. Now they designed it like that, and that, by the way, that's a 6. They designed it like that because when it scans it, it has something to do with clearing it, processing it, and then clearing it again at the end. Something like that. You have to ask somebody who understands the barcode. But you can find that same one. It's a 6. So it says 666 on the barcode. That's just signs of things to come. I've got a credit card that came to me, and it's 6667. Okay? You can tattoo 666 all over my body. It won't make a difference. I'm still saved. I'm still going to glory. I'm not going to be in the trib, so I'm not worried about anything 666. I will agree, I don't like getting a license plate that says 666 and being the pastor of a church. Those two don't go together. So I might squabble about that. Am I worried about it? No. But you know how people perceive that. Next thing you know, I'm being shot at. Okay. All right. Here's somebody, 2 Samuel 21:20. And like I said, we're just perusing through. We're not getting close to covering all the things. In 2 Samuel 21:20, you have a type of the Antichrist, and that's going to be Goliath. Goliath of Gath. And look at verse 2 Samuel, 1 Samuel, no wonder I can't find it. 1 Samuel 21:20. And there was yet a battle in Gath, and there was a man of great stature that had on every hand 6 fingers, every foot 6 toes, 24 in number. He also was born to the giant. And when he defied Israel, Jonathan, the son of Shemaiah, the brother of David, slew him. Now, this is not actually Goliath, but it's one of his brothers. These 4 were born to the giant in Gath and fell by the hand of David by the hand of his servants. So it's not exactly the same one. I don't know if they all had, I wonder if they all had 6 fingers, or 6 fingers and 6 toes. But 1 Samuel 17:4. First Samuel 17:4. These guys keep coming up 6. And there went out a champion out of the camp of the Philistines named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. Now, the 6 cubits, you say, but what's a span? Well, a span is between your thumb and your little finger. I measure mine, it's about 6 inches. I don't know if that, somebody else's might be 7 or 8 or whatever. I don't know if we're talking about the span of a giant here or the span of a man, but he's 6 spans. I'm thinking it's the span of a man. A cubit is approximately 18 inches, 1.5 feet. I've checked. It's from your elbow to the tip of your middle finger there, and that gives you your cubit. And mine's almost exactly 18 inches. It might differ somewhat there. But if he's 6 cubits, that makes him 9 feet tall. 9 feet tall. That's pretty big. What's the tallest basketball player? About 8 foot? Maybe. And that's somebody that's probably had some that lived near Chernobyl. Huh? Somebody been feeding him something, spider venom. I don't know, but anyway. If you bury a man, you bury him how deep? 6 feet under. Now here's something. A snowflake. A snowflake has 6-fold radial symmetry that is going around it. It's 6-fold. It's hexagonal crystalline structure, 6-sided. Okay. The thing about the snowflake is each one is unique, just as each man is unique. Okay? Did you know that there's so many snowflakes out there, and there's a certain percentage of them that have 12 branched? They're 12 branches. Yet they are still hexagonal. They're men, but 12 is connected with Israel. You know you got Jews and Gentiles, right? Okay. And not one single snowflake is perfect in symmetry. They can find flaws in all of them. And that's a picture of man. I mean, he's wonderfully created, but he's flawed and he's sinful and he's imperfect. And that snowflake pictures that. Of course, I believe every snowflake, the nucleus of every snowflake is a piece of dirt. It's a speck of dust. And that's really how the Bible labels us. We're marvelous in that God created us, but we're fallen and need to be redeemed and need to be born again. Okay, let's go to the number 7. What'd you say? Snowflakes or dirt bags. Either one will fit man. All right, the number 7, of course, it's going to picture the divine number of completion, and it follows 6 and precedes 8. In other words, a man is incomplete, and then he trusts Christ, he becomes complete. And after that, there's number 8, which is new beginnings. There'll be a new beginning for him. The first mention is found in Genesis chapter 2, verse 2. Genesis chapter 2, verse 2. It says, on the 7th day, God ended his work. He completed it, which he had made, and he rested on the 7th day from all his work which he had made. So you have the 7 being the number of completion. That's the first mention of it. And guess what? That's going to carry through all the way. There's so many 7s in the Bible, tons of them. The word 7, seventh, sevens, found over 600 times. Maybe 700, I don't know. I'm not going to go back and count them. When God ordered things in this universe, I told you 3 is a big one. You'll find, we gave you a list of about 50 or 60 things where 3 is stamped all over everything. 7 is also a number that is stamped out there. You have 3 basic colors, but you have 7 primaries. How's that go? Is there 3 primaries and 7, what do we call that? Tertiary? No. Secondary. There are 7 secondary colors. Roy G. Biv, okay, I had to teach myself that as an adult. Nobody taught me that as a kid. I don't know what was going on in our schools. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. Those are the 7 colors. Every painting on earth is either one of those 7 colors or a combination of those colors. There are 7 notes to music. You'd think man would take note of that and say, man, I mean, why 7? But there are only 7 notes. Everything ever composed is composed of 7 notes. You say even the black keys are half notes, so it's 7 notes. Your body has 7 members, whether you're male or female. You have 7 members to your body. There are 7 continents. Now they talk about the 7 seas. I realize that could be a little misleading, but I found a list of the 7 seas, and they had North Atlantic and South Atlantic and North Pacific and South Pacific and 3 others I can't remember. But there were 7 seas. There's also called a thing called, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, climes. C-L-I-M-E-S. Anybody know what that is? It says climes. Might be, but I don't know. It has to do with the levels. You have Antarctic, and then you could have equatorial. So it's the different layers, and there's supposed to be 7 of those layers. Now I saw one on the internet for 4 layers, but what I read, some of the literature I read says they've broken it down into 7 different layers or climes. I don't know why they didn't say climates, probably be easier. 7 layers. Every 7 years, your body has completely remade every cell in your body. Every 7 years. I think mine took a break somewhere along the line. I don't feel new anymore. The periodic chart, here we go. I think I can't remember if I looked at the 7th element or not. I'm not sure I got too much out of that one. Now, some things I can't figure out. There's probably something to it. What is the seventh element? Anybody remember? Maybe it'll, huh? Carbon? Huh? Is it chlorine? But the periodic chart has 7 periods in it. 7 periods in the periodic chart. And what's interesting is when we study octaves or the law of eights, nitrogen. I believe it is, I know about nitrogen. Nitrogen is the 7th most abundant element in the universe. And it's number 7 on the list. At least that's what I read. If I probably researched nitrogen, I'd find some things about nitrogen. There's all different kind of things. And maybe I got something down here. I may have already put something in here. I can't remember. Okay, there are 7 days in a week. Completes the week. The Bible often lists 7 of something, or 7 divisions, or 7 of something. Anyway, we recognize 7 dispensations, the 8th being a new beginning. The expression 7 times, now that could be something happening, repeating itself 7 times. 7 times in the Bible can be years. The Bible talks about a times, and a half a time, referring to 3.5 years. So a time could be years. When it says that, you'll find it over there in Daniel where Nebuchadnezzar gets turned into a beast, and it says that 7 times passed over him. 7 years like that. No wonder he had claws like, an eagle, and feathers looking like feathers growing out his back. Must have had a hairy back to look like that anyway. But 7 times, it could be 7 years. That thing is found 35 times. Of course, Daniel's 70th week, 70 times 7. The criteria for forgiving someone is 70 times 7. So you'll find, and I've got a bunch of verses here, but you can look it up. Any program, you can look that up. Then you get to the book of Revelation, and man, the 7s they're just coming at you one after another. You have 7 churches, 7 vials, 7 trumpets, 7 angels, 7 stars, 7 lamps, 7 horns, 7 eyes, 7 thunders, 7 heads, 7 crowns, 7 plagues, 7 mountains, 7 kings. You have 7 personages mentioned and 7,000 that fall in a certain situation there. And in the last chapter, this book is found 7 times. Now that, I probably didn't get them all. But the 7s are just, what is book of Revelation is about God completing? It's the completion of Genesis 1:1. Where God starts the creation and hits some rocky road, and the 7s complete it, and then you come to the 8s, and of course you have new beginnings. But we're not done with 7 just yet. Romans 5:6, this is one I didn't mention. I actually did, but I didn't call it the 7 eyes. I think when some Christians get to this, they start thinking, well, what exactly does he look like? If he's got 7 eyes. What verse I tell you? 5:6? Yeah. Revelation chapter 5, verse 6, I beheld, and lo, in the midst of the throne of the 4 beasts, in the midst of the elders, stood a lamb as it had been slain. That is, he bears the marks of the crucifixion, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent forth into all the earth. Well, those 7 spirits of God are defined in Isaiah chapter 11, verse 2. There are 7 of them. Isaiah 11, verse 2. Did y'all come in with a good spirit this morning? Well, that's one way to define a spirit, right? You had a good spirit about you, and that's how they're defined here. Look at 1 Corinthians 11, verse 2. Isaiah 11, verse 2. And the Spirit of the Lord, that's 1, shall rest upon him. The Spirit of wisdom, 2. And understanding, 3. And the Spirit of counsel, 4. And of might, 5. And the Spirit of knowledge, 6. And of the fear of the Lord, 7. Those are the 7 eyes, or the 7 spirits of God right there. And if you're saved, you should have all 7 of those spirits. If the Lord's in you, you got them. All right. I mentioned the law of Sabbaths, and that is completion of a week is the seventh day. That's a day of rest. Then you have the seventh month. Then you have the seventh year. What would they do on the seventh year? Let the land rest. And when they didn't let the land rest for 490 years, they went into captivity for 70 years. God didn't forgive them past 490 years, and He doesn't expect you to forgive anybody past 490 times. How oft shall I forgive my brother? He said 7 times. He said no, 70 times 7. Now you might think because it rhymed, that's the reason the Lord said that. The Lord doesn't say anything without there being something to it. And the Bible doesn't say anything about there being something to it. And the reason it's 70 times 7 is because that's how long He forgave Israel before He lowered the boom on them and put them into captivity. They had broken that Sabbath for 490 years, and they broke 70 of them. So that's how long they went into captivity. Then you have the seventh year. Did I mention that one? Yeah, seventh year. Then you have 7 times 7. Then you have a Jubilee, 49. The 50th is the Jubilee. And finally, you have the seventh millennium, which we have yet to begin, at least the millennial reign of Christ. That's your law of Sabbaths. That's the reason that's assigned to that Jew. It tells that Jew, you know from Genesis at the very beginning how long it's going to run. It's going to run 6 days, because 1 year or 1 day with the Lord can be 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is 1 day. You know it's going to run 6 days with a rest. 6 days with a rest. Okay? And that thing carries all the way through. That's why it's assigned to that Jew. That's Sabbath. We can read the sign, right? If it says bridge out, well, that's for Jews. I'm plowing ahead. No, you can read the sign too. And the sign is this thing wraps up. It just doesn't go on forever. There's some Christians think somehow it's just going to keep going on and on and on. No! It's got to wrap up. Why? A short work hath the Lord made on the earth. It's only a week to Him. It's a short work. Now, prophetically for us, it's like it's 7,000 years, but we'll get through the millennium. But for God, it's 1 day is 1,000 years, 1,000 years. It's a short work. And we're going to get through it. I know you think, I just don't think it'll ever happen. You'll be sitting there one day, next thing you know, you hear the trumpet blow and up you go. Talk about shock. There's going to be a lot. Listen, Christians are falling away in this day and age because they don't think it's going to happen. They're going into postmillennialism and amillennialism. Why? It says in the latter days, I'm not endure sound doctrine in the last days. And they're not doing it. They're falling out. I don't know what they do. They can't see it, but can't you see it? Can't you see this thing? It's really tightening up and winding down. God's getting the whole world ready for the final stage. He's getting the whole world ready for the Antichrist. That's the reason why you can't change it. That's the reason why no matter who you vote in, they go that route. I don't care what you do, you're not stopping this because God is helping them to arrange that thing. It's His will that the Antichrist comes down and that he reigns on this earth. Because why? Because the earth has rejected Him. He's going to take His children out and then away it goes, man. And there's no stopping that thing. All right, lastly, and I got to finish, is the 7 sayings of Christ on the cross. Okay? I'd actually think about that. There are actually 7. What are they? Well, here's what they are. When He first says, He says to His mother, woman, behold thy son. You think a Roman Catholic would pick that up? The fact that every time He addresses Mary, He calls her woman? You wouldn't do that to your mother, would you? But He probably had to do that to His because He knew a bunch of people were going to think she's some kind of mediatrix when she wasn't. Was she special? Of course she was. She was selected. She was a vessel that God used to bear the body that her Son would dwell in, or that His Son would dwell in. She is the mother of Jesus, not the mother of God. But to keep that thing straight, he always calls her woman. He said, He's on the cross. He doesn't say mom or mother. He says, woman, behold thy son. And what He's doing is He's entrusting His mother to John the beloved disciple. And what's interesting about that is John, okay, or Mary, has at least 6 other children. There are 3 other brothers and at least sisters, at least 2. No, there are 4 other brothers. 4 brothers, at least 2 sisters, and Jesus Christ, making 7. Completion. And he's the first and he's the 7th. Interesting. We talked about number 1 being God or unity. He says, woman, behold thy son. And he's telling Mary to look at John and said, there's your son. Yet she's got 4 others, but he wouldn't entrust them. He wouldn't entrust his own mother to his half brothers and sisters. He entrusted it to a disciple. And then it says he looks at John and says, behold thy mother. In other words, you're the only one I can trust. Listen, he's the only one leaning on his breast, and he is that disciple whom Jesus loved. And I told you he's a type of the bride. John means beloved. He's there toward the end, even sees the second coming, which you and I will be present at the second coming. There's all kinds of typology there. But he says to John, take care of her. And she takes him into his home from that point forward. And yet she has a whole parcel of kids living that could have took care of her, and Jesus didn't trust him to them. Even one of them becomes the pastor at Jerusalem, the Lord's brother, James. Then he says, woman, behold thy son, then behold thy mother. That's 2. I thirst, and I don't have these in order. I thirst, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Found in Psalms 22:1 also. It is finished. Into thy hands I commit my spirit. And today shalt thou be with me. I told you I didn't have them in order. Today shalt thou be with me in paradise. 7 things. I kind of want to do a study on those. I just think there's a lot more in those. I mean, these, you see what's happening there. It's a completion of the atonement. 7 sayings. There's got to be so much meat on those verses. So those are the 7 sayings of Christ. We're going to stop there. Next week we'll probably do 8 and 9, maybe 10, and we got a few more to go after that, and then we'll conclude, because I'm not going to get into going to 1,000, dragging it out. There might be something to it, but I'm not going to do it. It's beyond me. So, all right. Any question? Yes. I'm sorry. Well, could be God's word to man. That's the fact that they're arranged. The bread was arranged on the table in the Old Testament, the table of showbread, in 6 loaves and 6 loaves, 66 books of the Bible. Yeah, I can't think of nothing else. Okay. When it was first completed, it was incomplete in the sense that it had not been purified 7 times. A King James Bible has far more revelation in it than if you had a Hebrew, if you had the autographs, I mean the ones Moses penned out, and if you had the autographs, Second original, yeah. I'm not talking about the tablets, they'd be kind of heavy. But if you had Genesis through Deuteronomy or whatever, and then you had all the other originals, okay, the original autographs of Paul, the Bible you have in your lap has more revelation in it because there's no punctuation, there's none of the numbering system, and there's a few things in a King James Bible that you can't find in any other Bible. And it's either God can't preserve His Word, or He preserved it, and that thing is an advanced revelation, because revelation is progressive throughout the Scriptures. And that purified 7 times, that thing you've got at the end is going to be the perfect, pure Word of God. Any man that can get up and correct this book, there's something wrong with God, if it's true. So I say there's something wrong with the man. All right. Anybody got a... Yeah. Exactly. Yes.